Hello and welcome to the Adobe channel. My name is Terry White, worldwide designer and photography evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to stream to you for the next hour on Introduction to Lightroom CC Part 4. We're going to start with the Develop module. I booked this as two parts of this particular learning stream, so this will be Part 1 of the Develop module, and Part 2 will happen on Tuesday, because I just don't think we're going to finish it all in an hour. Because there's a lot to talk about in the Develop module, but this is Introduction to Lightroom CC Part 4, Develop module Part 1. And if you've been missing Parts 1 through 3, you can catch those as the video on demand here on the Adobe Twitch channel at twitch.tv/adobe/profile if you want to scroll through all the videos and find it. Or you can go to my YouTube channel at terrywhite.tv in case you're watching this. Well, you wouldn't be watching the replay unless you're already watching the replay, so I'm not going to say that. But in case you want to see it, and that way it's not going to expire on my YouTube channel. Because the videos, we do keep them for a couple months here on Twitch, but they do eventually expire. And that way, if you do want to catch it later, my YouTube channel won't expire. It should always have the videos available. And while I'm on the topic of the Adobe channel, I don't know if we hit it yet. Someone can check and let me know, but we were like right at the 50K follower mark. So I think we had 49,972 when I started this morning. So we were 28 followers away from our 50K mark. So if you're not following the Adobe channel, please follow the Adobe channel. I want to hit that 50K if we haven't already hit it while I'm streaming, because then I can take credit for it. No, but all jokes aside, if you're not following the Adobe channel, good content here, 7 days a week, about 17 hours, 18 hours a day. Follow the Adobe channel and you'll always find something interesting to watch. And you'll see people doing creative stuff here all day, every day. So with that said, let's go ahead and kick things into gear. 49,979. And I know that's because most of you are already following, but guys, we got to get that last 21 people. I don't know how we're going to do it. So if you're new here, you've never followed the Adobe channel, do me a favor, follow the Adobe channel right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the Develop module and what the Develop module is for and what we're going to do with it and so forth and so on. So I'm going to switch so you can see my computer. And now you see my computer, and you see where we left off over, parts 1 through 3. This is the same catalog we've been working on. This is the same content we've been working on. We have 3 folders now that we've accumulated since the first episode. So there's the Auckland one that we brought in, I think, on day 1. There's the Gina J one we brought in on day 1. Here's the tethering one from last week. And of course, we worked on collections and smart collections in the last episode. And we're going to do Develop. And there's one thing I need to check. And because if I didn't outline it as one of the episodes, then I'm going to cover it right now because it's important. So let me check one thing real fast. Creative Cloud Learning Stream, there it is. I see what it is. I did have it as supposed to be part of episode number 2 or part 2, and I didn't get to it. Okay, so we need to cover it now because I don't want to not cover it. And I think because we have this for 2 parts or 2 episodes, we'll have enough time. Okay, the thing I forgot to cover on part 2 was part 2 was supposed to be folders versus collections, smart collections, and keywording. I didn't get to the keywording part. So let me do a quick thing on keywording, then we can dive into the Develop module. So what are keywords? Why should you do them? And how will they help you if you do them? And what does that really mean if you put them in? And what does it really mean if you don't? So think of keywords as, if you can imagine searching on Google. You go to Google, you do a search. You type in anything and things will start to come up no matter what you type in. Well, a lot of that's because there's metadata in those websites or optimization of those websites that have specific keywords or specific terms or specific words that match what you're searching for. And Google has gotten so smart over the years that even if it doesn't match the exact keywords, it will probably still bring up what you're looking for. Like, when was the last time you really had, in a Google search, had to go to page 2? Usually what you're looking for 9 times out of 10 comes up on page 1. So if you think about it that way for any other content, now think about it this way for your photos. When you're looking for photos, and the chances are you're saying, well, I don't have that many, I can find what I want now. That's good for now. But as you continue, and you will continue to add more and more photos to your collections and your catalogs, finding the photo you're looking for a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, or even today might become more of a challenge, because I think I'm pretty good at keeping things organized in collections. And therefore, for example, if I want to find an image from Paris, I can probably go to my Paris collection from last year. And I'm pretty much going to find an image from Paris. But if I'm trying to find an image and I don't remember that it was from Paris, meaning, let's say I'm trying to find an image of, maybe I photographed a woman in a yellow dress walking down the street, and I don't remember that was Paris. Now I won't remember to look in that collection to find it. So yeah, broad general things I can pretty much find in any of my photos. But when I'm trying to find something that isn't really tied to a specific event, but I know I took that photo, that's when it becomes hard to find. I'm looking for a red car. I don't know. I don't have a collection called Red Cars. I don't have a folder called Red Cars. But maybe I shot a red car at the auto show. That's probably where I'd start. But then if I don't find it there, where do I look next? I don't know. You start trying to figure out, well, what city was I in when I shot the red car? So forth and so on. So that's why keywords take a few extra minutes or seconds, but they will pay off forever. Because once you keyword a photo, that photo has been keyworded forever. You will always be able to search on those keywords and always be able to find things in the keyword, or find those images if you look for those keywords. So that's why there are people that are keyword fanatics that will spend hours, weeks, days, months keywording, and then there are people that never keyword. And there are people like me that are somewhere in between. I put a few keywords in here and there of things I know I might want to look for later. I'm definitely not diligent about my keywording. I should be, but I'm not. So let me show you what a keyword means, or what you're going to do with it. I'm going to bring up this photo in the loop view. Now, right now, this photo is called Twitch Tether 002 because this was in episode number 3 where I talked about tethering. And I guarantee in a month from now, I will not remember this photo. I will not remember that I have it because I'll forget all about that class. I'll forget all about episode 3 was about tethering and I photographed this. So if I'm going to look for this photo someday, or I want to be able to find it someday, that's probably a better way to put it, then I should probably put some keywords in that would let me search for this photo. So for example, if I twirl down keywording, I did put some keywords in because that was part of the lesson, because you can put keywords in while you're tethering. So I put a few in. I put hat, studio, Twitch. Now, the hat is like a sub-element, or not even the main subject in this photo. So I probably still wouldn't find this photo because I'm not looking for this photo because of the hat. See my point? So what would I be looking for this photo for? Well, right off the bat, these are some of my Egyptian pictures. So I would say Egyptian. That's one of the things I might be looking for. Sphinx, because that's a picture of the Sphinx. Queen. That's an Egyptian shot I did of an Egyptian queen theme. Her name is Candace. That's a picture of Candace. King Tut. That's King Tut over there on the left. That's an actual picture from Egypt. I don't know. Portraits. portrait, wall art, photos. Nah, photos is too broad. I would never search for that. And you can start to think whatever else you might look for. Travel, because that's a travel photo. That's a travel photo. Camel. There's a camel in that photo in the bottom left. And whatever you think you might look for later. Throne, because I took other pictures of this model not on the throne. So if I'm looking for the throne pictures, I want to find it there. So you get the idea. Once you're done putting in your keywords, you can just hit enter, and now that those photos have been that photo has been keyworded with those keywords. So if I ever decide, let's say I'm over here in the Gina favorites here, and I'm like, or actually no, I should go up here to all photos, and I've got right now I've got 69 photos. In my regular catalog, I've got over 189,000 photos. So if I ever look for a picture of King Tut, I don't want to have to search, and I'm never going to search in the Twitch folder. I'm never going to remember that was there. So if I go here to text in the library filter menu, and I just type in the word Tut, there it is. It comes up, and all the pictures that have the word Tut in them would now be displayed. And I can then do whatever I want to do with them. Add them to a collection, print them, export them, whatever. So that's why we keyword. If I'm looking for a picture of Candace, that picture comes up as well. If I'm looking for a picture of a hat, all the pictures with the hat come in. And even though, this is another reason why you got to be more broad when you're shooting tether and you're using generic or importing using generic keywords, because you got to make sure that keyword is really applicable to every photo that you're shooting. 3 of these photos don't have the hat. So in this case, these 3 photos are irrelevant. They don't really have the hat, so I'm going to go ahead and take that word out. And as soon as I take it out, they disappear from the search because they no longer match that criteria. So just think of it as, am I ever going to want to search for this photo? And if so, what would I want to search for? And put those keywords in. That's the easiest, simplest way to remember it. If you're never going to want to look for that photo, I would question why you have it. Why is it in your collections? But if you are going to want to look for it and you may not remember what collection it's in, that's when you keyword. Now, one more thing. Let's go here. And actually, you know what? Let's do it. Yeah, we'll do it here. I made up his name because I don't remember it. But these are all in a folder called Randy. And even though the file name is Ashley, because this is Ashley's boyfriend, even though the file name is Ashley, they're in the right folder. So if I were looking for a picture of Randy, I'm probably going to find it in the Randy folder. Probably a good guess. But let's do a couple things. First of all, he's got on a white t-shirt. And what is that? Burgundy or orange rust pants. Let's do rust. Not burgundy. They're more like burgundy or rust. Orange pants. So those are some of the things I might look for in this photo. But what I really might look for is, maybe I'm looking for every picture of Randy, whether I look in that folder or not. Maybe I have other pictures of him that aren't in that folder. So that's why, again, keywords start to come in mind. Now, of course, I can go ahead and type in his name as a keyword, but Lightroom already has a feature for people. If you go under your view menu, you can view the people view, the letter O. And that will, burgundy is redder than that. Okay, thank you. So I can now tell it, because I've never turned this on. Do I want to start finding faces in the entire catalog? 69 photos wouldn't be bad. If you got 69,000 photos, that would take a while. So I usually don't do it in the entire catalog. I do it only as needed. Meaning, only turn it on for the collections and folders I want to look at them in. In other words, find it in those. Now in this case, let's see here. Let's scroll this down. All right, so now it's going through and it's looking through that collection, and it didn't find any faces in this one. I wonder why. Oh, probably because of the angle and the darkness. Not a good example. Let's go ahead and do it here. There we go. So it's finding it in genus. And now you're probably saying, well, why didn't it find it in his? Well, look at the photos. Look at these images. It's hard for, it's trying to detect a face, and the shadowing is throwing it off. Now, if I really want to add it to these photos, I can manually. I can go in here with this tool and say, well, this is really a face, and his name is Randy. So if it doesn't do it automatically, you can do it manually. But let's go ahead and go back here, actually in the O view, there we go, where it found pictures of Gina. It found some faces in this collection. Now, it found 4 that it thinks is the same person. Then it found 1 that it's not sure if it's the same person. And then it found a different person. So this is Gina. And as soon as I tell it it's Gina, it puts all 4 up there as Gina. If I wanted to look at all 4, I could. And that's all 4 to make sure that is the right person. All right, so let's go back. And now, and I think it said it a second ago, it brought up a question. Is this Gina too? And it is. So I can just drag that up instead of typing it again. I don't remember her daughter's name, but that's her daughter. And I would type in her name. So we call her Sandra. I don't remember her name. All right, so now I've identified those 2 faces. And what it's done is it's automatically added. For example, if we go to this photo, it's added it for both faces. Whereas before, you would have to take the time if in a multiple person shot and go in and do that. So in this case, it's identified the faces for me automatically because it could. And in the other cases where it couldn't, it didn't. So if I were to go through this, go through her folder and now go to faces, it's going to continue to ask me because we only did it on a collection. There were only a few photos in there. Now we're in our whole folder, and it's now already asking me and prompting me. Is this Gina? Yes, all 9 of those probably are. Is this Gina? Yes, it is. Is this Gina? And I can select all 3 and say yes. It doesn't know this one, but I can just drag it up and say, yes, that's Gina. Yes, that's Sandra, if that were her name. I know it's not. All right, so that is doing the people tag. So you can do keywording, you can do people, and you notice what it did? It added those as keywords anyway. So now, no matter what folder Gina's in, no matter what, and by the way, it even found the mask photos. And it even found the painting photos. So I can say, yes, that's Candace. So it's finding faces everywhere it can. So I can go ahead and say, yes, that's Tut. But in the cases where the face is obscured, shadowed, tilted, turned, it may not auto-detect it. And if it's not a real face, meaning like in this case, it's not something I'm going to look for as a person, then I can say, no, these aren't real people that I'm going to look for, and it removes the face frame off of that photo. All right, so now that we've got our photos identified, I can get out of the people view, and I can say, now if I'm ever looking for a picture of Gina, I can. And it will find all pictures of Gina, even though the file name is not Gina, even though it may not be in a folder or collection called Gina, and even though, yes, you can add them manually, and even though I may not have identified this in the right place, now that I've given it the people tag or person tag, I can always find them. So I use keywords for describing everything else, and I use the person or people search feature for people. And that way it'll find them. So in this case, let's see. So someone was asking, so that means you can add them manually if I go here. And let's see, that one didn't get added. Let's go. So if I want to add them manually, double click and drag and add. So now that one's been added. So yes, you can do them all manually. I don't know if you can do them more than one at a time. Let's see. I'm just trying to find more than one that hasn't been done. It may not put it in the right spot on each photo because each photo could be in a different spot. No, you have to do it one at a time. Sorry. All right, so if you're doing it manually, unfortunately, it is one at a time. Okay, that's it. That's the keywording section that I didn't get to in part 2. But now you know the purpose of keywords. You know how to do keywords. You can even have keyword suggestions now because once you do a few, it'll make suggestions. You have your keyword list, so you can search for, like for example, instead of me going back and typing it in, I can say, just show me my camel picture. And it'll jump right to the picture with the camel. Show me my rust picture. It'll grab the rust color pants. Show me my Sphinx picture. It'll go back to that same photo. Show me the one with a hat. It'll go to any pictures that have a hat in it. So the keyword list is another quick way to get to the photos you're looking for that you've keyworded, because it'll have the entire list of keywords. You can separate it out for people or other things other than people or all. Yes, I don't call that keywording. So Jan saying he does that on the map module for locations. That's geotagging. It's a way of finding something, but it's not what I would call keywording. So right thing, wrong term. All right, so we've got this now in place. Let's get out of this, and now let's talk about, great, we're right back where I want to be. Let's go, actually we're not where I want to be. Let's go to the Gina folder. And now let's talk about the develop module. Let's start with this photo. What's the develop module? So, and here, let me go back. You have library, which the library module, we've now covered a lot of it. We haven't covered all of it, but we've covered a lot of it. We've covered the ability to put our images where we want them to be. We put them in collections. We've put them in smart collections. We have identified, hang on one second here, sorry folks. Hang on one second. We've we found ways of identifying the photos with keywords. So those are all things that, sorry, my chat computer just went to sleep, so I can't see what you're saying. I just woke it back up. Okay. We found all these ways of organizing, finding, sorting, things like that. Even though there's more to the library module that we'll go over, but that's the main thing. The develop module is for making adjustments to your computer. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my computer. For making adjustments to your image. These are all non-destructive. Everything in Lightroom is non-destructive because everything is just metadata. So if I add keywords, I'm not permanently changing the photo. I'm adding those keywords by default to the collection, to the catalog. If I make an adjustment to this photo in the develop module, I can do anything I want in the develop module and always be able to get back to the original, even if the original is not a raw file, even if it's a JPEG, because everything in the develop module is non-destructive. So if I go to this one photo here and I click develop, or the letter D for short for develop, that will show me this long panel of all the things that can be done in the develop module to this photo. So you've got presets on the left, we'll talk about that. You've got a preview, which is nice, on the left, and you've got your entire develop module on the right. Now, what is the develop module and what does it relate to in other things? Well, if you've ever used Photoshop, if you've ever used Camera Raw, this is Camera Raw. In a nutshell, that's what the develop module is. Everything that you would think to do in Camera Raw is in the develop module. Now, when people say, well, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the develop module or Camera Raw? I'm going to say the develop module for one reason. Even though they're pretty much the same, they're 99% the same. Why do I like the develop module in Lightroom over Camera Raw in Photoshop or Bridge? For one reason. When you have presets and you hover over the preset, see what it's doing in that preview window up there? It's showing me what it's going to look like before I click on it. So if I click on auto tone, that's what auto tone would do. Camera Raw doesn't have a preview. You have to click on it first to see what it's going to look like, then undo it if you don't like it. I can see what it's going to happen before I do it. That's the main reason I love the develop module. Otherwise, they're pretty much, 99% the same. So, What do I look for when I'm making adjustments, and what adjustments do I make? In the case of this photo, well, first of all, and my answer to that question is I make as many adjustments as I can in the develop module. And if I can make them all here relatively quickly and easily, I'd rather do it here than to go to Photoshop. Does that mean I don't use Photoshop? The exact opposite. I use Photoshop every day, all the time, because there are things that I can do in Photoshop that the develop module can't do. There are also things I can do in Photoshop faster than I can do them in the develop module. So those are the reasons why I prefer the develop module for as much as I can, but I still use Photoshop for everything else. So we're going to use that example right now. So in this case, I do as much as I can here, and then I look and say, okay, is there anything left? And if the answer is yes, Photoshop. If the answer is no, I'm done. So in portraits, most likely, I can't do it all. I'm going to do some things in Photoshop. In landscape shots, travel shots, buildings, product photography, things like that, Lightroom. I can do pretty much everything I want in Lightroom. There's rarely a reason why I need to go to Photoshop, unless it's to do the things that Photoshop can't do, like text. Oh, I'm sorry, Lightroom can't do text. Compositing two images together. Masking. I can't do any of that here. This is pretty much, think of it as one layer, non-destructive, but that's it. You don't get to build on top of it. So that's the difference between the two. All right, so now that we've got this image open, what do I look for? So first and foremost, to be honest, the first thing I do is sharpen. Why? So I don't forget. That's the only reason. This doesn't need to be first, but I look on the left first, and I click this sharpen preset that's built in. These two presets for sharpening are built into Lightroom. Well, I heard you should do sharpening at the end. Do it at the end then. I heard you should do it at the beginning. Do it at the beginning then. I heard you should do it in the middle. Do it in the middle then. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you is everyone has an opinion on when it should be done. I don't really care. You do it when you want to. I like to do it in the beginning so I don't forget. And this doesn't do a significant amount of sharpening, but it does a sophisticated way of sharpening. Notice there are two presets. There's Sharpen Faces and Sharpen Scenic. The way I like to tell people is, if there's a person involved in the photo, use this one, Faces. If there's no people in the photo, use the other one. Easiest way to remember it. So in this case, there's a person involved, click Sharpen Faces. Why do I say this is sophisticated? Because if I go down to the sharpening here, you'll notice that there's a mask option. I'm going to hold down my option key and click on that and look at what it did. Everything that's dark got, everything that's light got sharpened. Everything that's dark did not. It auto-detected the face and did the right thing. Sharpen the eyes, sharpen the lips, sharpen the edges, but not the skin, not the hair, not all the things that shouldn't be sharpened. So that's why I like that preset, because it's not only as something I can do quickly and non-destructively, it does a really good job at it. So that's why I like the Sharpen Faces. Okay, next. Once I click that, then I head over to the right. And over on the right, one thing I cannot get past, even though the histogram would be the place I would start first, but in this case, one thing that's really off on this photo is the white balance. Now, white balance is something that is a mathematical thing. You can set your white balance to the correct number for each photo. Correct doesn't necessarily translate to it looks the best. So if you set your white balance and you're still looking at the photo and saying it's too warm or it's too cold, that's okay. Adjust it. The white balance, mathematically correct white balance, doesn't always look the best, especially on people. The reason I know the white balance is off on this photo is because that background looks kind of bluish, and this was shot on a white background. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it should be white. It just means it should be white to black, meaning gray. There should be no blue. There should be no color in that background. And that's why I know the white balance is off. So I would grab the white balance eyedropper, and I just target the thing that's wrong, usually, that I know is wrong. You're normally supposed to target something that's around 18% gray. Guess what? You're going to take photos sometimes that don't have anything that's gray in it. So in that case, you're going to do the next best thing. You're going to click on something that should be white or should be black. And that is all right, Jan asked the question I skipped over. This is back to the keywording thing. Doesn't geotagging your photos manually in the map module also add the location keywording in the metadata? It has location metadata. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is, if I geotag a photo in Egypt, the word Egypt is not going to be in the keywords. Will I be able to search and find it if I type in Egypt? Maybe, I don't know. I haven't tried that. So I'm just trying to make that distinction, especially with this being an intro class, that geotagging is geotagging, keywording is keywording. They are different features in Lightroom. I do them both. But I don't want to call geotagging what it's not really called in Lightroom. It's not keywording. That's why. Okay, so so back to our white balance story. So if I hover over this, look at the preview. The preview shows me the right color. This is another reason why I like Lightroom's Develop module over Camera Raw. Because if I hover over the wrong thing, I'm not going to get the right color. If I hover over this yellow, look at what that's going to do. That's not the right thing to click on. Hover over the hair, not going to really make that much of a difference. Hover over the jewelry, it's going to make it worse. Hover over the background, oh, that's going to really set the color the way it's supposed to be. Click, done. So that is something that happened in the metadata, did not did not permanently change the photo. If I want to switch it back, I can. All right, so now that the white balance has been properly set, and this is what I meant by if you don't like it, you can still alter it. If you don't like the way this looks and you think it should be warmer, drag the temperature to be warmer. I don't think it should be warmer, but I'm just showing you an example. If you think it should be cooler, make it cooler. This is not a good example, but I'm just showing you that you can adjust it more of what you think it should be after you click that eyedropper. What I like to do is click the eyedropper to get it neutral, and then if I want to tweak it, I can. All right, so let's undo my tweak, and that will put it back to neutral. Okay, so now that I've done that, there are lots of other things wrong in this photo. That was just the first one that was bugging me the most. The next one is where I will now go back to the histogram. In the histogram, by default, you've got these two triangles. The one on the left is showing me areas that are being, or shadows that are being clipped. Meaning that everywhere, notice when I highlight or click on this, or sorry, when I go near this area right here, watch this area. When I go near that triangle, that area starts to turn blue. That's a warning, and the fact that this is white is letting me know that's also a warning, saying that wherever you see blue now, that is completely filled in. There's no detail there. It's completely solid black. There's no detail at all. So what you have to ask yourself is it in an area that I care about, or is it in an area that can be fixed? In this case, it's in an area that doesn't really matter. I'm not going to gain anything in that little spot of hair if I adjust it. Now, I should also ask myself though, but if I adjust it to fix that one little area, will it make the overall photo a little better? Probably, because what that's telling me, and I'm looking at the data here in the histogram, normally you want your histogram to be as like you want data all the way across. That's not going to always happen, and it's okay if it doesn't happen. But normally you want data all the way across here. Right now the data is kind of stopping right here, which means this image is kind of on the dark side. And it is. I can look at it and tell that. So what I can see here is, hey, if I bring up the blacks in this photo, which now as you hover over each section, by the way, notice how it tells you where you are right here. So that's the blacks, the shadows, the exposure, and the highlights and the whites. So if I hover over the blacks area of the histogram and just click and drag to the right, it will lighten up the blacks and remove that warning. So now that's not being clipped anymore, but it adjusted the blacks overall. The overall blacks in the photo got a little brighter. So I have to look at the photo now and say, is that a bad thing or a good thing? If it's a good thing, great. If it's a bad thing, maybe pull back a little bit. But it did adjust the actual blacks slider. So so that histogram directly relates to the sliders below. You can either drag the slider. So for example, if I go back here to where now there's a warning, and if I say, oh, there's something wrong in the blacks area, then just drag the black slider until the white triangle goes away. So you can do it in either place. I like to fix it where it's warning me, where it's showing me the problem. Okay, it's showing me right here, fix it right here. But if you come down here and drag it, it would be the exact same effect. All right, so next, the overall exposure, even though it's not giving me any kind of warning, and it doesn't give me a warning, is just a little dark on this photo. I took this photo back in 2010 when I wasn't really that good at lighting yet. So the lighting in this photo is not great. So I can either just drag the exposure slider a little bit to the right to brighten up the overall photo, or I could drag it up here. Just drag this a little bit to the right. Now that's too far, but I'm just exaggerating to show you that. See how that exposure slider is only just moving a little bit, but it's making a tremendous difference in the photo. So in this case, if I go back down to, this is where we started at 0, and maybe just go up a little bit to make the overall photo brighter. Now when you do that, keep in mind you adjusted everything, including the blacks. So now you might want to go back to the blacks and say, do I really need to make the blacks over that far, if at all? And the answer is no. I can pull back a little bit on the blacks now because I made the overall photo brighter. So the blacks got brighter still again. So pull the blacks back down a little bit to darken up the dark areas. Okay, so the exposure looks a little bit better. Now there's some, some slightly hot spots here in her face. So in that case, I might look at the highlights or the whites and say, if I were to bring those down a little bit, that starts to get rid of some of the hot spot problem in the whites if I do it that way, or if I do it in the highlights. That's a little too much, but you see what it's doing. So that's the highlights area, or the whites, depending on which one you want to do. The whites is the overall photo, the white areas, and the highlights is the highlights. So those hot spots. So you can make your adjustments there. Now, I'm making what we call global adjustments, meaning adjustments that go across the entire photo. What if I just want to do her shoulder? I just want to adjust that little spot on her shoulder. That would be called a local adjustment. Local adjustments we're covering in part 2, which is on Tuesday. So today is just all global stuff. We'll get into local adjustments on part 2. All right. And let me just do one more thing there. Cool. Okay. And okay, so now I've kind of adjusted the white balance, sharpening, exposure. I kind of got the image more the way I would want it to look. There are lots of little things that are wrong as well. Now, we kind of really took care of tone. I kind of showed you everything in tone except the shadow slider. So the shadow slider brightens up the shadows or darkens the shadows. So shadows and blacks go hand in hand. Highlights and whites go hand in hand. Each one is slightly different. So shadows and highlights are shadows and highlights, where blacks are the overall photo, whites is the overall photo. All right. Next, presence. I never really paid attention to the name of that category. But presence has clarity, vibrance, and saturation. I will tell you that back in the day, when clarity first appeared in Lightroom, I used to use it all the time on people. Now I don't use it all the time on people, and I never use it anymore on female subjects, because over the years it's been adjusted to where it's now very, very noticeable, whereas before it would add punch to the photo, a little punch, make it look a little bit more defined. And now it's been tweaked to where that definition is on the bad side of female subjects. It makes the skin look too hard. Now, if it's a guy, a cowboy, or something like that, I'm trying to make the person look rough, a bodybuilder, whatever, or a female bodybuilder in that case, I would maybe use a little clarity. If it's anything else, objects, cars, travel, landscapes, I'm absolutely using clarity. But this is what clarity would do. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I mean on the skin. If I adjust the clarity, and see, it's not doing too bad of a job today. But, oh, actually it is. If I look over here, look on this side. I was looking over here where it wasn't so bad. But if I look over there, see how she's really starting to get definition here not in a good way. So that's why I don't use clarity. Now, maybe I just don't use as much. But at that point, you would ask yourself, then what am I gaining? If I'm only going to use a little bit, what's the point? So I don't use clarity on people as much as I used to. I absolutely use it on non-people photos. Vibrance, I absolutely use on people. I use vibrance pretty much on every photo I shoot. Why? Because I haven't met a color yet that couldn't be a little bit more vibrant. So we can see a little bit of color here in her top, the yellows, the purples that are there. So if I were to increase the vibrance, and I'm going to make it drastic, you have to go a long way before it starts to badly affect the skin. Now that's too far. It's all the way to 100. But then she starts to get orange. I'm not going to make the joke, but she starts to get orange. And I'm going to go ahead and just pull it back a little bit. And right about there, the skin still looks the same, but the top and any other colors, the lipstick, things like that, tend to get more vibrant. Now you're thinking, well, what's the difference between vibrance and saturation? Same thing. Vibrance is great for people, things that it looks out for skin tones. Saturation doesn't look out for anything. It just makes everything more saturated. So I use saturation on everything that doesn't have people. I use vibrance on people shots, portraits. So if I were to adjust the saturation, everything gets more saturated. Everything. So in this case, saturation on a person, not good. I would scroll. I would scroll back. Actually, the quote would be, I haven't met a color that couldn't be a little bit more saturated. Not that I didn't like. All right, let's go back and let's put it back to 0. So in this case, we don't want saturation. Now, I missed one more slider here. And I just forgot to show it. Contrast. Contrast what used to be, okay, so let's look at, I talked about clarity and how it used to be okay for people. Now it's not so good for especially female subjects. And contrast was the exact opposite. I used to not use it because it really didn't do anything. Now it's way better. So along the way, the algorithms are affected and adjusted inside of, we're going to come to that. The algorithms are adjusted inside of Lightroom from time to time, and sometimes what you used to do works better on certain things or all things, or not as good on certain things. So you have to test it along the way. So in this case, I used to use the tone curve and the tone curve presets for my contrast until I realized and actually found out that contrast has been drastically improved since I first started using it. So if I crank up the contrast, the photo gets more contrasty. Now again, don't look at contrast as sharpness, because we already did sharpness. You're looking at the contrast between basically the lights, the shadows, and the highlights of the photo. So if I were to go over and maybe, okay, so let's start back at 0. So that's 0. If I were to go over to the right a little bit, maybe about right there would be good. Because anything too much is going to start to bring in too much darkness into the dark areas and blow out the light areas a little bit too much. So a little bit of contrast is not a bad thing. Now, that doesn't mean I still can't use the point curve. And I like to try the point curve just to see what I get. So here's the preset of medium contrast and strong contrast. But as you can see, those made it look worse since I've already adjusted the contrast. So I'll go back to linear because now I'm using the contrast slider instead. So someone brought up in the chat, what about holding down the Alt key and moving the black and white slider? There are all kinds of keyboard shortcuts we're not going to get to, but there is one I will show you. And if you know those keyboard shortcuts, great, use them. What you're telling me is you're not a beginner. Hey, what about holding down the Alt key? That's a thing you know, so do it. The thing that isn't obvious is Remember we talked about this histogram, which is starting to spread out a little bit more now that we made these adjustments? You can set your tonal range in Photoshop using the black and white sliders, but not with the Option key or Alt key. I'm going to show you a different method. I'm going to show you the Shift key. If you hold down your Shift key, and keep in mind, any adjustment I show you, especially this one, or white balance, you got to remember, you can still adjust to taste. So if I show you this and you say, I don't like it, then pull back on it. Automatic is automatic. It doesn't always mean automatic you'll love it. So keep that in mind. All right, so if I hold down the Shift key and I double click whites and I double click blacks, that will set the tonal range for this photo. And I'll either like it or I won't. So if you don't like it, then pull this black slider back to where you like it, and I'm sorry, the white slider back to where you like it, and the black slider to where you like it. But what that should do is even out your histogram. And in this case, it brought back the shadow problem because it adjusted the blacks, or the blacks problem. So I can still pull back on that and make that adjustment after the fact. But that's normally a place where I would also start before I make any other adjustments. Get the tonal range where I want it to be, then adjust everything else accordingly. White balance, sharpening, white balance, tonal range, then adjust. Because then you're starting from a neutral point in all of those cases to fine tune it the way you want. All right, let's see, we got 7 more minutes. Let's keep going. 8 more minutes, actually. Okay, so we talked about white balance, we talked about everything in tone, we talked about everything in presence, we talked a little bit about the tone curve, and again, the tone curve is a curve because it can be adjusted just like the curves in Photoshop. So now I'm down in the lower left of the curve, so that's the shadow areas. So I can adjust the shadow areas manually. I can go up here to the highlights and adjust the highlights manually in the photo. So you can adjust any part of this using the tone curve as another way to do it. Now the other thing I should point out, and since this one is the first one that has one, you'll find them throughout Lightroom. Like there's one, let me see if there's another one here. There should be another one. There should be one here. Why am I not seeing it? Okay, anyway, if you see these little targets, when you click it and bring it over to your photo, this is called a targeted adjustment tool. And many of the things in Lightroom's develop module have this tool. What this is for is you're saying, I don't know what sliders I should be adjusting for this, but I know where the problem is. And keep in mind, it's not isolating, it's not masking, it's not going to do just that spot. But what you're saying is, I know the problem is in this area. I'm going to drag the target over. I'm just going to click and move the target over to this area. And then when I drag up or down, it's affecting just those values. Now, those values could exist all throughout the photo, so the entire photo is being adjusted. But you're targeting your adjustment, in this case, since I clicked on highlights, to the highlights of the photo by dragging up or down with that target. So that's what that's for. So anytime you see that little target, that's saying, ooh, that's a thing I can go over to the photo with and drag on the photo. And you should say, ooh, just like that. All right, so for example, all right, let's talk about, since we're here, let's talk about the next one, and we'll maybe finishing up on this one. And that's why we did 2 parts for this. So part 2, we'll pick up where we left off on Tuesday and continue this. Hey, Socolicious. How's it going? So in the hue, saturation, lightness, color, and black and white. So hue, saturation, and lightness, this has its own target adjustments as well. And the hue, saturation, and luminance, I should say, has its own sliders to adjust every aspect of this. So if I thought she was still getting a little bit, actually, saturation. If I thought she was still getting a little too orange, I could drop the saturation down of the orange. See what that's doing? And that's adjusting just, oh, and so you can get these kind of weird split tones as well. So I can drop down any particular color or increase any particular color that I think is adversely or needs adjustment. Yep, you got here at the end. We have like 4 more minutes and we're going to be wrapping this up. How can the time go so quickly? Learn something every time you tune in. Cool. Glad you did. So, target adjustment means I don't know which color it is. I can't tell. Maybe I'm colorblind. So I want to adjust this color right here. And if I go up or down, oh, look, it's adjusting the yellows because I targeted that part of the photo. Now, it's not just the yellow in her sweater. If she's got yellow in her skin tone or anywhere else, that's getting adjusted too, because these are global adjustments. But you're targeting a specific color and making adjustments to that color with the target. And it may be more than one color, but you're adjusting those colors with the target adjustment tool for each one of those. So you'll find the targets throughout the develop module where they make sense to be. So that was hue, saturation, lightness. We were already on color, and color lets you go into each one individually as well and make adjustments. So you have all the colors, or all, you could say all, or individual. And black and white's one of my favorite, because what I love about black and white is obviously it's converting the photo to black and white. It's losing all the color. But it remembers what the colors were. So if I want to go in and say, and this is great for the target. If I want to grab the target and I want to pump up the brightness of this area of the photo, and I don't know what colors those are, I can use the target adjustment and adjust those values just by dragging. So I can make my, on the background here, I can make my, that's not really going to do a whole lot because there's no color in it. I can make my adjustments based on the targets here that I want to adjust. So keep in mind, we're in black and white mode, but we're using the target adjustments to adjust how our black and white is going to look. And that would be a more attractive black and white than the one we were working on. All right, so we're out of time. Next up is my good friend Jason Levine at Beetlejace, and Jason's going to be doing, I'm sure, something audio and or video related, because that's what he does. And if you're just getting here, thanks for catching the last couple minutes of my stream, and hang out for Jason's stream. Let's see, Terry, thank you so much for these amazing streams. Can't wait to take your sessions at Max. Okay, great. I will see you at Max. Thank you guys for watching me live, and of course, if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay / and or video on demand. And again, if you haven't followed the Adobe channel, it's okay if you follow it now and give Jason the credit if we hit 50K during Jason's stream. But that's pretty much my time. I hope you learned something today about Lightroom. And if you watched earlier, hope you learned something today about the mobile apps. So with that said, I'm going to let Jason hop on in less than a minute here. And I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for the